Fulham did the double over Newcastle United last season, so will it be repeat or will it be revenge? Welcome back to another video, guys, and it is a preview for Fulham in the Premier League this Saturday at 3 p.m. And you might be sitting there thinking, well, it's too early for a preview. The Benfica game only finished 10 minutes ago. Well, it feels like that, doesn't it? But you know what? I've thought about this and I thought I'd try and get me previews out 2 days before the actual game because yous are busy. You've got busy lives. You don't have lives to put on hold and say, sit and think, I'm going to watch Antonio's video. I'm not going to do that important thing because Antonio has just put a video out. So I try and give you as much time as possible to do a video. And I've thought about this as well, right? And this is going to sound pretty disgusting. But if you're anything like me, you like your downtime, you like your own time. And usually I spend a little bit longer in the bathroom than I need to. So that got us thinking. Sometimes everybody goes on their phone, right? Does that mean you guys sometimes watch my videos in the bathroom? It's just a thought. Just the way I think. But we are here today to speak about Fulham at home on the weekend. And in my opinion, this is a must-win game because we had a sensational performance against Benfica. We did the same against Union Saint-Gilloise, but we didn't build on that momentum. This is a perfect opportunity to build on the momentum that we're seeing against Benfica. But Fulham actually did the double over Newcastle United last season. So in this episode, we're going to be looking at our record against Fulham. We're going to be looking at what to expect from Fulham, how we can beat Fulham, and then we're going to predict the starting 11. And you might not all agree with that. Let's get straight into the video because we've got no time to waste, man. Go, man. Will it be repeat or will it be revenge? Like I've just mentioned, Fulham came to St. James's Park and actually come away with 3 points, which is very rare because our record against Fulham is simply outstanding, and I'm going to show you exactly why. But we cannot afford another defeat to Fulham. Jacob Murphy opened the scoring in the 37th minute, and then it was a second half turnaround from Fulham. Raul Jimenez scored in the 61st minute, and then super sub Rodrigo Muniz scored their winner on the 82nd minute. In the build-up to that game, Newcastle United were actually on a good run. They'd only lost 1 in 10 games, so we could not take Fulham lightly, despite our amazing performance against Benfica. This is a different game, different competition, different opposition, and a different day. Here's a few statistics going into this game. Fulham, after an 8-game winless run against Newcastle in the Premier League between 2018-2024, Fulham completed the league double over the Magpies last season. I'm sorry to remind you, I really don't want to because nobody likes losing. Newcastle lost this exact fixture 2-1 last season. Only once have they lost back-to-back home games against Fulham in 1950 and 1951. And when I say Newcastle have an outstanding record against Fulham, even in all competitions, I mean they have an outstanding record. Prior to last season's 2 defeats, Newcastle had not lost to Fulham since 2017, and that was a championship game. Since then, there's been 9 games, 7 wins, 2 draws, 0 defeats. And you can see the results on the screen there. Went to their place in 2017 and beat them 4-0. There's another 4-1 victory there. There's a 3-0 victory. So if we're taking away last season, Newcastle have actually got an extremely good and positive record against Fulham. Fulham have lost their last 3 Premier League games. They lost at Aston Villa, lost at Bournemouth, and then got beat off Arsenal. They currently sit 15th in the Premier League. That is 1 place and 1 point behind Newcastle United. So in my opinion, this is a must-win game, especially coming off that Champions League game where we were simply outstanding. Our individuals were outstanding, but collectively as a team, we were excellent. So if anybody should have confidence going into this game, it should be Newcastle United. Taking away last season, we've got an excellent record against Fulham, but Fulham are coming into this game after 3 defeats, whereas Newcastle have been excellent in the Champions League, excellent in certain games, in certain moments in the Premier League. They just need to find that consistency, and these are the types of games that become banana skins, the ones that you're expected to win. And because we've got the home advantage, I bet you any money, all you guys are thinking, yeah, we can beat Fulham. Which you're right, but what I'm trying to say is we can't be complacent. But do you know what? I'm quietly confident. If Gordon brings in that form that we've seen in the Champions League, we can be a match for anybody. Nick Valdemara has started absolutely superbly. I don't even think he's had a bad game yet. Even when he doesn't score, he has a good game. He impacts the game. Harvey Barnes coming off the bench, showing our squad depth. Even when he comes on at right wing, Jacob Murphy played well, and the team looked very balanced. They looked very nice. They looked comfortable, compromising. Even with that midfield, you can see why Eddie Howe wanted Jacob Ramsey. Somebody that offer a little bit of dynamism in that midfield. Lewis Miley looks so comfortable in that number 6 role. Granted, you might not get as much space and time on the ball as you did against Benfica, against Fulham, but that result, that victory, the manner of the victory will certainly breed confidence throughout this team. And like I said in my review after the Benfica game, Eddie Howe will be more pleased about how the collective performed together rather than how the individuals performed. Having individual brilliance is excellent. You need that. When Gordon's on it, he can be unplayable. And you need that in your team. But from a manager's point of view, he wants the overall structure to work. And against Benfica, looked like it worked. Benfica came to sit back, be compact. But our movement, our willingness to run the channels, our willingness to compromise, hide each other's weaknesses was all there. And Benfica just couldn't cope with it. So I want a similar performance. I want the attitude. I want the desire. I want the hunger. Even if the game is not going our way, I want us to continue doing the right things. Because if you go hiding, that's when it's easy for the opposition. If you start going through the motions, that's when it's easy for the opposition. So it's all fun and games when everything's going your way, but I want us to play like we do when it's going our way, when it's not going our way. Does that make sense? Let's spend a little time talking about Fulham, what to expect from Fulham, how they're set up, how they play when they're in possession, how they play when they're out of possession. So the base shape is normally a 4-2-3-1, and they occasionally shift into a 4-3-3, depending on their personnel and the opposition. But when they're building up, they usually build up in a 4-3-3, and they use a single pivot with 2 number 8s, and that's how the progress play. They adopt a dynamic approach, swifting between formations to create numerical advantages, exploit spaces. What I like about Marco Silva, and he's done a terrific job with Fulham, he always tries to get his players into the best positions. That means they can make the most out of their individual skills. The way he's transformed Iwobi, the way he's integrated Josh King into this Fulham squad, who's an absolute player, by the way. They stand out because he gets them into their best positions. He plays to their strengths. And that's what a good manager does. In the build-up, it's all about central creativity. And the reason they do this is because they want you to think that they're going to attack centrally, and then they create 2-against-1s in the wide areas. So this is how they do it. The number 6 acts like an anchor, and then the number 8 support the transitions. So they'll try and exploit gaps and run the channels. So for the 2 number 8s, it's all about final third combinations. Now that doesn't worry me in particular because we play with a 3-man midfield. So it's our 3 against their 3. If we played in a double pivot, I would be a little bit more concerned. Now what they do very brilliantly is their wing play is excellent. Now they use their left side differently to the way they use their right side. The wingers stretch the pitch while the fullbacks overlap or underlap depending on the phase. On the left-hand side, the left back, which is usually Robinson, prefers to push up to the left wing position. This allows Alex Iwobi to come inside into like the attacking midfield position. And on their right hand side, they do it a bit differently. Kenny Tete, who's injured for this game, I believe, stays more cautious. He stays in his position. Their number 8 pushes into an attacking midfield position, so they don't play with an inverted winger on the right hand side. Their winger stays wide to stretch the pitch. You often hear me speaking about stretching the pitch. It's so important in football. And I'm going to touch on that and exactly why I've started this 11. I'm going to start just for those dynamics. So that's what Fulham do from an attacking point of view. Now, from a defensive point of view, their base formation is a 4-4-2. Fulham look to set up in the mid-block. They always try and squeeze the centre of the pitch and force you into wide areas, because once the ball enters the wide areas, that's when they set their pressing triggers. Fulham want to do 2 things: force the play out wide, but also force you into a negative pass. A negative pass is either a sideways pass or a backwards pass. So what Fulham like to do is they're not aggressive like Newcastle when they press. They do a bit more shadow pressing, so they don't mind their opponents having the ball. They'll just come and squeeze you to force you into a sideways or backwards pass, and then they'll drop off. But what Fulham do, because they like to squeeze the pitch as a unit, they've got to play with a high line, because what they're doing there is limiting the space in the midfield. So their centre-backs play dead close to their midfielders. The reason being is because if they do win the ball back, then they've got a numerical advantage. However, playing with a high line requires defenders with good pace and good spatial awareness. This is where we can hurt Fulham. So how did Newcastle punish Fulham and really get at them tactically? Exploit wide channels and half spaces in transition. I've just spoken about how Fulham like to push on their left back. And as you can see in this image here, this is their average positioning against Bournemouth. The space is clear to see. Their centre-back goes into wide areas. He doesn't want to be there, but he's got to do it to benefit the team. Now, that's where you break on Fulham. Attack the wide spaces. Anthony Gordon and whoever plays on the right wing is going to be the most influential players in this game, because when we overturn the ball, they need to realise that as a trigger, get on their bike to give us options in that final third. So those little intricate passes into the final third, into space in behind Fulham's backline, is exactly how you beat Fulham. Arsenal didn't do that when they played Fulham away, and that's why Fulham were able to manage Arsenal. Arsenal scored off a set piece, unsurprisingly, and came away with a victory, but they didn't really create many opportunities because they weren't exploiting the space in transitions. So what I'm trying to say is, because their left centre-back, which is usually Calvin Bassey, needs to go into wide areas, use that space between the centre-backs and the full-backs to attack. Now, Nick Valdemar is not really somebody that'll run the channels. He's not a striker that likes to run in behind. He likes to drop deep and receive the ball. And I often speak about players compromising for each other to hide each other's weaknesses within the squad. What we've seen against Benfica is every time Nick Valdemar dropped deep, you had Bruno, Anthony Gordon, Jacob Murphy making runs in behind the back line. We have to do that against Fulham. So we've got to have a similar performance, similar tactical structure than what we're seeing against Benfica. We do that and we play to our fullest and truest ability. We're a match for anybody. Will cause teams a lot of problems. So that takes us on to my next point, and something I always say: play forwards, be direct, because Fulham leave opportunities and gaps for you to exploit. Use the wingers as third man runs to become a big threat in transitions. Now, out of possession, when Fulham have got the ball, my pressing trigger would be their number 6. Everything goes through their number 6. So when he's isolated in possession and their 2 number 8s advance forward, if you press him intelligently but quickly, forcing him in errors and making him uncomfortable, 1, it puts him off his game. So that disrupts Fulham's rhythm. And 2, it allows Newcastle to overturn the ball in good areas and break and try and create good opportunities. Now, Fulham, they've actually signed some very talented players. They signed Kevin, who's a Brazilian. What a name for a Brazilian, by the way. He's very dangerous. Now, he's just slowly getting into their side and finding his feet at Fulham. He usually plays on the right wing. I do expect him to start against Newcastle, because he's got that pace, he's a good dribbler, he's direct, he's instinctive, he can score, he can create. So I do expect him to stop. But do you know who I've really enjoyed watching this season? And it's his first season in the Premier League, Josh King. I love the way he just receives a ball on the half turn, finds little pockets of space. If you can utilise him properly, he can be an absolute gem for any team in the Premier League. So Fulham have some dangerous players. Just because they're sitting 15th in the Premier League doesn't mean they're not a good side. But I know if we play our natural game, we're a tough opponent for anybody. Taking tactics away, I want to see a similar attitude than what we're seeing against Benfica. Regardless who our front 3 were, whether it was Gordon or Murphy who started the game, or Barnes that came onto the game, let's play with the same intent. Be brave in and out of possession. Have the willingness to support attack, because that's how we beat Benfica, and it was simply amazing. Let's continue to support each other in possession. The movement always dictates the pass. So when Nick Valdemar has a ball at his feet, give him options, because if you don't give him options, you're just putting your guy in trouble. So you need to look out for each other on a football pitch, is what I'm trying to say. But that off-ball movement is where it's so dangerous. Movement kills in football. And this is why we sweep teams aside when we're moving off the ball. We completely dismantled Benfica's compact shape, forcing them into difficult decisions and difficult positions. And we need to do that against Fulham. And I also want us to continue being confident in our actions. In the Premier League, for some reason, our players look like they're overthinking things, hesitant when they're playing the ball. If you're going to play it, be decisive. I don't mind you losing the ball when you're taking a risk. You're going to do it, make sure you do it and don't give it 50%. So just before we get on to the starting 11, I nearly give you a sneak peek there. But what I want to say here, right, against Benfica, we stretched the pitch. Even we had runners moving into space that they knew they weren't going to get the ball. The reason you do that is because you make their opposition make a decision. So you're making their individual players have a decision. Because what we're seeing was Gordon, when he come inside, Jacob Ramsey was going into the left wide area. The reason he was doing that is because Dan Burn isn't dynamic. So he's not dynamic enough to go into that area. This is why it worked so well when Lewis Hall was in the side, because Joe Linton didn't have to go into that area. He didn't have to be the dynamic one going in that area, because Lewis Hall would do it for him and Joe Linton would cover. But when you've got Dan Burn at left back and nobody's going in that area, their right back is comfortable enough to follow Anthony Gordon. which doesn't free up Anthony Gordon, but it also squeezes the pitch in the central area, so you've got less room to play through. Does this all make sense? So when you play with Dan Burn at left back, you need to have your left number 8, a dynamic left number 8. And this is why I've selected the team I've selected, because I'm going to be honest, I haven't selected Lewis Miley, and there's a reason for it. Is because Tonali's back. If Tonali is not 100% and he's still ill, I would play Lewis Miley. And then you've got a decision between Jacob Ramsey and Joe Linton. But the fact that Tonali's back, the decision should be Joe Linton or Jacob Ramsey. And the reason why I've selected Jacob Ramsey is because Dan Burns at left back. If Lewis Hall had been at left back, I might have selected Joe Linton. So it's not about he's better than him, so he should play. It's about the profiles that complement each other. And I think by having Dan Burn at left back, Jacob Ramsey complements our team more because he's dynamic enough to get in that left wide position when Gordon comes inside. Because if we don't have anybody doing that, their right back's got an easy decision to make. Just follow your man. But considering Jacob Ramsey was moving into that position, their right back was like, well, I've got to go with him, so I've got to leave Gordon. Then he was passing Gordon on to the centre back, and then we were creating one-on-one situations. That's how we were devastating. So we need to continue doing that. So considering Dan Burns at left back, I'm starting Jacob Ramsey. And this is my lineup. I think it's incredibly harsh that I haven't picked Harvey Barnes, but I think Jacob Murphy did just enough to keep his place. So I would keep the same back 5. Nick Pope in goal, Kieran Trippier right back, Sven Botman, Malik Chow and Dan Burn at left back. If Sandro Tonali is healthy, I'd start Sandro Tonali. If he's not, I would actually play Lewis Miley over Joe Linton just to give you that little bit more control. And then Bruno, I need another performance from Bruno. I want to see him support Nick Waldemada. I showed you the average position map of all of our players against Benfica. Bruno was higher than Nick Waldemada. We need more of that. So then we've got options in the final third to play forwards. Jacob Ramsey, I would start him, and I've just explained why. Nothing against Lewis Miley, but just the profiles because Sandro Tonali's back. Jacob Murphy, I would start in the right wing. I think you could see the connection was there, the chemistry was there, and we're not in a position in the Premier League where we can have people learning on the job. Let's continue to start Jacob Murphy and breed Anthony Elanga into his position. It's very harsh on Harvey Barnes because his 2 goals, I would actually consider starting him on the right wing, because that front 3 of Anthony Gordon, Nick Waldemada and Harvey Barnes, that is a bit special. So that's what I would do, guys. But I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear your predicted starting 11s. I want to hear your prediction for the game. My prediction for the game, I'm going to go Newcastle United 2, Fulham 0. I know that's brave, but we do keep plenty of clean sheets. So if you've enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button to support this channel. And until next time, away the lads.